Welcome to the overview of the Sequencer Cinematics tools. This video covers the tools and features that the asset provides specifically for use inside Unreal Engine Sequencer. Begin by placing the blueprint of the tank actor into your level. Next, create a new level sequence to host our animation. Now, let's prepare the tank for the sequencer. Select your tank actor in the level. In the Details panel, search for the Cinematic category. You must check the box for Enable Cinematic Tank Features. This flag is the master switch. Without it, none of the sequencer tools we are about to use will work. Next, inside the sequencer, click the plus track button and select the asset. For the animation of specific parts, such as the turret, main gun, and machine gun, this asset utilizes a pre-made control rig. Here is a quick example of animation using the control rig. To access the tank cinematic controls, click the plus button on the actor track. Navigate to the Cinematic category in the menu. Here, you will find the list of all exposed variables, such as cinematic throttle, steering, brake, and gunfire. Select the properties you need to add to your timeline for keyframing. In this example, we added the cinematic throttle variable with a value of 1, which corresponds to full throttle. We verified that autoplay was enabled for the level sequence, and then started the simulation. The tank immediately began to move. And this is how you can animate reverse movement. Set the cinematic throttle to 0, add the cinematic brake track and set the value to 1, the tank will move backwards. To perform a sharp stop, you can use the cinematic handbrake. Add this Boolean track and check it to engage the handbrake. This is especially useful for quickly stopping the tank from high speeds. To fire the weapon, add the cinematic gunfire Boolean track. By default, this triggers the main gun. If you want to fire a secondary weapon, add the cinematic set gun to fire variable. Remember that index 0 is always the main weapon. Indexes 1 and 2 are typically used for machine guns, but this depends on the specific tank model. Some may have 2 machine guns, while others have fewer. Here is a quick example of using different weapon types in conjunction with the control rig. While you select and fire the weapons using the cinematic variables, you use the control rig to aim the turret and weapons. We also demonstrate the smoke screen effect. To trigger this, enable the cinematic fire smoke grenade option. Please note that the availability of this feature depends on the specific tank model you are using. To steer the tank, use the cinematic tank steering variable. Set it to 1 to turn left or -1 to turn right. To perform a pivot turn, rotating the tank on the spot, keep the cinematic throttle at 0 and set the cinematic tank steering to 1 or -1. This allows the tank to spin in place without moving forward. Managing steering manually can be difficult, so let's add a spline. Drop a BP cinematic spline into the scene. The spline actor has useful tools like snap to ground to flatten points to the surface and close loop for circuit tracks. The cinematic spline actor displays the index number of each point directly in the viewport, which makes working with events easier. These numbers update automatically as you add new points to the spline. There is also a distance value preview option in the Details panel. By adjusting this value, you can see a cone marker move along the path. This allows you to find the exact value needed for the cinematic distance on spline variable, enabling you to animate the tank to stop at a precise location. The spline actor has useful tools like snap to ground to flatten points to the surface and close loop for circuit tracks. Enabling the Hide Spline in Simulation option hides the point numbers and the distance viewer from simulation and your final render. And finally, there is the Clear Spline option, which resets the spline to its default shape. To use the tank with a spline, in your tank's details, assign this actor to the Cinematic Spline reference slot. There are two ways to use this spline with the physics simulation. First, use only steering from spline. When enabled, the tank automatically steers to follow the spline, but you still control the speed using the cinematic throttle and brake. Second, use events from spline. This uses metadata in the spline points. You can set specific points to trigger events like start moving, slow down, or stop moving and reverse moving, allowing for automated behavior along the path. Finally, for control without physics simulation, we have the Use Distance from Spline option. Now, the tank's position is locked to the spline. You animate the tank movement by keyframing the cinematic distance on spline variable. To help you place keys precisely, use the distance value preview on the spline actor to get exact value for the cinematic distance on spline variable. A major feature here is the Enable Cinematic Editor tick. When checked, you can move the timeline and see the tank moves along the spline without pressing Simulate. That is useful to keyframing, for instance, the tank turret with control rig. For better interaction with the terrain in this mode, enable Cinematic Line Trace Move. Instead of just following the spline's rotation, the tank will trace the ground below it to calculate a more realistic pitch and Z height. And that covers everything you need to know about the Sequencer Cinematics tools. Thank you for watching.